Daniel Mail, Unit 11741. I hope that everybody had a meaningful Yom Kippur and a easy fast. I wanted to reveal or go over what J-Post revealed last week. I'm going to go over the two articles that they posted about the equipment shortages in the IDF. Obviously, many people have been screaming about this issue for over a year now, and it's important that in Israeli newspapers covering it more seriously. And there are definitely questions that arise from these two articles. So we'll start with the first article from Eliav Breuer. Classified doc reveals extent of demand for military equipment at start of war. Exclusive. According to Yulia Malinovsky, Yisrael Beitenu, the hundreds of requests made outside the chain of command demonstrated the reality of missing equipment. So just off the bat, it was not hundreds of requests, thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of requests. Not everybody went to a member of Knesset. So just from the beginning of this, it's already understating the extent. A classified document obtained by the Jerusalem Post revealed the extent of the demand for military equipment in the weeks following the October 7th massacre. The document was presented in the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee on October 23rd and includes nearly 350 requests for military equipment gathered by an ad hoc call center that MKs formed in the days after the massacre. Notably, many of the requests came from regular Army units and not just from reserve units. More surprisingly, this included special units. A significant portion of the requests originated from combat reserve units, while others came from military medical personnel and even the Air Force. Other requests were submitted by specific individuals, and one even came from a municipality. This is an important point. It's not just reserve units, it's also regular standard soldiers. This is still true till today, that there's still problems. Obviously, the regular service soldiers are going to have a better situation, but it's not like they have perfect equipment. There's a huge issue with expired ceramic plates. It's up for debate whether or not the average logistics officer in the IDF knows that ceramic plates even have expiration dates. So this is still a problem till today. Going on here, sorry. The most common request is for bulletproof tactical vests with a demand for approximately 4,000. That's wild. It's easily over 100,000 vests that were needed. Sources have told Unit 11741 that the actual number of ceramic bulletproof tactical vests were in the country, in the Army, were under 50,000. And a shachpat does not count as a vest that someone would want to wear into intense combat. So the true number is obviously going to be exponentially higher. Next, for approximately 2,500 military helmets. This is insanely low. Again, it's important to note that the average logistical officer in the IDF right now does not fully understand that there's a difference between the it's not just a comfort difference between a helmet from 1979 and a helmet from 2024. It's actually a safety difference. And this point is known by some people in the IDF, certainly in research and development. And they're, for whatever reason, not issuing a recall on the helmets, which is something that is a major problem. 2,000 were specifically for lighter tactical helmets, around 600 special military knee pads, 200 requests related to medical equipment, including 150 tourniquets and a number of fully equipped medical kits for doctors and medics, 40 reflector sights, and 20 rifles. I can tell you that most people don't trust the logistics arm in the Army, so they were just going about it, and I don't think they actually had faith that if they went to a member of Knesset that something would get done. So all of these numbers are a small drop in the bucket with the actual reality. The demand for military equipment was likely much longer larger than recorded, as members of Knesset redirected many requests directly to donors without inserting them into the document. Yes, and there's even members of Knesset that fundraised for equipment. However, the document sheds new details on the scope of the demand for equipment in the first 2 weeks of the war. Despite widespread reports of a lack of equipment in the early days following the war, IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari stated on October 9th that no equipment was lacking and that, quote-unquote, patience was required, adding that, quote, even if it takes more time, everything will arrive. Hagari lied. He's never apologized for that publicly. Just the other day, he went into Lebanon to film something for the spokesperson's unit, and he's wearing a brand new perfect helmet, and soldiers on the front lines still don't have that equipment. So it's worth considering the situation and why Hagari hasn't been completely honest about it. Hagari said the complaints stem from the fact that over 300,000 reservists had reported for duty, an unprecedented number, and that in some reserve units, recruitment levels reached 200,000, meaning that over double the amount of personnel that were summoned showed up. Hagari also stressed that not all units needed commando-level tactical gear, so not all requests are critical. Just this past Friday, Itai Fogel, Hashem Yikom Damo, was killed in Gaza. He had recently received a new tactical helmet from us, Unit 11741, and according to Hagari's estimation and what the IDF says, he wasn't deserving or needing a proper safe helmet, and he was killed by an RPG. So that's just one example that strikes particularly close to home. But clearly this is a lie. However, MKs interviewed on the matter criticized the Army's conduct. According to Yulia Malinovsky of Yisrael Beitenu, who is part of a team of MKs handling the issue, the hundreds of requests made outside the chain of command demonstrated the reality of missing equipment. The IDF was ignoring reality and unwilling to ease some of its restrictions to accept at least part of the equipment, according to Malinovsky. The military even knowingly lied about how much equipment it had, Malinovsky said. Let that sink in. This is coming from someone who looked at some of the information. While the IDF was justifiably concerned that the donations would include subpar equipment that could endanger troops, Malinovsky said the Army's aloof and inflexible attitude showed that ego played a part as well, as the IDF did not want to be viewed as unprepared. And it's also worth noting that the equipment that the IDF was providing to the soldiers was inadequate, subpar, and got soldiers either killed or injured. So every time that the Army was saying that donations are not acceptable, or they were subpar, quote unquote, they were not being honest and having an equal appraisal of the situation with equipment that they were giving to the soldiers. MK Oded Forer of Yisrael Beitenu, who dealt in the Knesset operations room with obtaining rifles for civilian first response teams, also said that the IDF had not been truthful about the real situation on the ground. Now the question is, why aren't these people speaking up about it earlier and more publicly earlier? Because these are the lives of sons and daughters across Israel. This is basic life and death equipment. So why is this being leaked over a year later? And how come this isn't being talked about openly in the same way, with names, much earlier? A quote from the spokesperson's unit: due to the vast reporting for service of reservists at the start of the conflict, the IDF purchased tens of thousands of pieces of protective gear for the combat soldiers' use. Throughout the war, the IDF has repeatedly stressed that the procurement of combat military equipment is organized in an orderly and professional manner. The IDF acts continuously to ensure that the donations that are received pass the necessary examinations, both in the context of the quality of the equipment and its appropriateness to its purpose in ensuring the necessary safety standards. Donated equipment that does not meet the IDF standards will be prohibited from use. Is issued equipment from the IDF that's not standard, is that prohibited from use? Or are they still sending soldiers into Gaza, Lebanon, and Judea and Samaria with substandard equipment? The answer is that they're still sending soldiers into these combat areas with substandard equipment. So while the IDF publicly takes a very strong stance on the issue of donated equipment, why can't they take the same stance and issue a recall on unsafe equipment that they're still issuing the soldiers? All units of the Army are issued equipment that meets the standard and according to the quantities that correspond to the structure and organization of the field units for battle. What does that even mean? No idea what that even means. I don't think that the average logistics person in the Army could even answer that for you. We're not talking about having advanced night vision scopes that can see for miles for every single soldier. We're talking about having a basic safe helmet, a basic safe vest, the ability to see at night, a communication set that functions, things along that nature. And they're still gaslighting the soldiers and saying upside down things. And I want to just talk quickly about Svika Klein's editorial. IDF equipment failures endangered soldiers. The correct headline would be IDF equipment failures did not protect soldiers and soldiers died. And that did happen on a few cases. While the IDF cited concerns about the quality and safety of donated gear, it's difficult to shake the feeling that pride in bureaucracy played a significant role in their decision. And this is from Svika Klein again, the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. During the first chaotic days of the war, I began receiving calls from several friends serving in the IDF. These weren't casual conversations, they were pleas for help. Whether stationed in Gaza or on the border with Lebanon fighting Hezbollah terrorists, they all faced a troubling reality. They were woefully under-equipped. They asked me if I could help raise money either from Jews in the diaspora or Israelis so they could buy life-saving equipment like ceramic vests, food, and basic necessities. I don't know why. I mean, obviously there's food issues in the call-up of that sense, but I don't think food should be included in that. Ceramic vests in particular can mean the difference between life and death in combat. Sure. Why wasn't this editorial written, or an op-ed written, a year ago? I know that Avi Meir was the editor-in-chief at the beginning, but if Tzvika Klein, who's very involved, is getting calls, I'm not sure why this isn't written earlier. And apologies if he did write something publicly and get on a podcast or go on television and say there's an issue, but I think that there's been a subduing of the level of need, and there's still such an insane need right now. And I don't understand why this article and the other article are only coming out now. While the grassroots efforts succeeded providing soldiers with some of what they needed, it became clear that this shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. Clearly. The IDF had consistently assured the public that their soldiers had everything required for battle, but the investigative report in the Jerusalem Post has now revealed the grim truth. The IDF's claims were far from accurate. And the reality on the ground was one of severe shortages. The requests came from various units, including some of the most elite forces. Shayetet Shoshrei Egoz Duvdevan. Unit 11741 has helped each of those and other extremely elite units. Again, the numbers that were included in that report are just laughably low. But I guess Speaker Klein's conclusion here, or one of them, is these issues are not new. Soldiers have been struggling for a lack of basic supplies for months. Soldiers in Gaza and in the northern front have been forced to wear torn uniforms, operate malfunctioning vehicles, and make do with whatever equipment they could scrounge together. These problems were brushed aside by the military as localized incidents, but the pattern is clear. Our soldiers are not being properly equipped, and the military's leadership has been in denial about it. Absolutely. It's time for the media to wake up. It's time for everyone to continue to scream about it. And if you haven't been screaming about it, start screaming and understand that These are life and death things that need to be provided to the soldiers immediately. This is a good first step. I don't mean to be critical of Jerusalem Post, other than to say that this should have been written 8 or 9 or 10 months ago in a more extensive way. In fact, I think that there should be a counter on the top of the Jerusalem Post every single day saying age of the oldest helmet. You have helmets that soldiers are still signed on from 1978. How is that acceptable for the Israel Defense Forces in 2024? It's completely morally repugnant, and we need to continue to speak about it. So I hope more papers and more journalists will continue to write about this issue, and it's time that we just tell the truth. I'd rather have a debate about how to best get the equipment to the soldiers now than to have a debate about which soldier gets buried where in Har Herzl. It's a life and death matter, and we need to continue to be loud about it.